They didn't fire me with a bang. They fired me with a smile. "David, you've done incredible work here. We all appreciate your contributions," said Aaron, the CEO I once coached through his first merger. "But we feel it's time for a new direction. Someone who understands the current landscape." I didn't say a word. Not when he said it. Not when the board members shifted in their seats, suddenly fascinated by the wood grain of the conference table. Not even when they brought in Trent. Let me back up. My name is David Linwood. I'm 58 years old. For the past 20 years, I was the Chief Strategy Officer at Paragon Collective, a business consultancy firm I helped build from a 5-man outfit in a shared office space to a national brand with clients across 3 continents. I hired most of the people in that room, trained them, pitched beside them, pulled them through recessions and restructures. I was never flashy, never loud. But I showed up every day, rolled up my sleeves, and built something I believed in. And now, apparently, I was too set in my ways. Aaron said the phrase like it was a compliment, like he was handing me a golden watch and not a loaded insult. Then, as if on cue, the door opened, and in walked Trent. 25, maybe. Collared shirt unbuttoned just enough to show the microphone clipped beneath it. Someone, probably HR, had set up a little ring light in the corner. His hair looked like it had taken longer to style than my last board presentation. He smiled like this was his moment, like he was stepping onto a TED stage, not into a position I'd poured 2 decades of my life into. "Hey guys," he said, waving. "Super excited to build something amazing here. Let's disrupt some systems and go full send on innovation, right?" No one laughed. A few nodded politely. A few didn't move at all. Aaron motioned for Trent to take a seat beside him. I stood there, watching, wondering if I was the only one hearing the undertone. He wasn't replacing me because I failed. He was replacing me because I wasn't viral. Aaron cleared his throat. "David, we want to give you time to wrap up your things. HR will coordinate your transition package." And that was it. No gold watch, no plaque, no thank you video montage with cheesy piano music. Just a stack of legal forms and a man-child with a YouTube channel. I looked around the room one last time. Diane from legal kept her head down. Philip, who I helped recruit from Stanford, actually flinched when our eyes met. I caught Aaron's gaze and held it longer than was comfortable. I wanted to say something. I wanted to call him out, to remind him who helped him rewrite our entire pricing model when he was just a jittery junior exec with something to prove. But I didn't. I nodded once, turned, and walked out. Down the hallway, I helped design. Past the company values etched into the glass wall, words I wrote. Past the break room, where interns still used the espresso machine I lobbied to install. I passed Trent in the hallway again on his way to record a big day, big energy intro video. He didn't recognize me. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. I got into the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor, and felt the silence settle over me like a weighted coat. No one followed me. No one stopped me. The elevator doors closed, and that was that. When I got to the parking lot, I sat in the car for a while, just stared at the building. The sun was starting to set behind it, casting long shadows across the concrete. I'd seen this place in every season, every storm. Stayed late through blizzards and breakups. Came early after my father's funeral because I didn't know what else to do with the grief. 20 years. Now it wasn't mine anymore. I didn't cry. Not then. I just drove home. Slowly. Like every green light was a decision I didn't want to make yet. When I pulled into my driveway, I left the engine running. The house lights were on. My wife, Karen, probably had dinner ready. She'd ask how it went. I'd say it was fine. We'd eat in silence for a bit. Then she'd ask what I planned to do next. I didn't know yet, but I knew this. I walked out with my pride. They may have replaced me with a kid who knew how to trend, but I built something real. And somewhere in that silence, in that refusal to grovel or rage, I reclaimed something they couldn't take. They wanted to replace a foundation with a facade, and foundations don't beg to stay standing. It started with a habit I should have broken. I told myself I was just checking in, nothing more. Just a curious glance. But we both know that's not true. Old instincts die slow. I was sitting in my home office, the second Tuesday after I left Paragon. The light hit the desk differently at that hour. Softer, less artificial than the boardroom glare I was used to. My chair was too comfortable. My inbox was too quiet. My calendar, once booked 6 months out, was now as blank as the legal pad I kept pretending to write on. So, I opened LinkedIn. Paragon had posted a live behind-the-scenes culture drop. That's what the caption said. A little red live badge hovered in the corner of the thumbnail. I hesitated just for a second, then clicked, and there he was. Trent, wearing sunglasses, indoors. "Welcome back to the vibe, Paragon fam," he said, walking backwards through the office with a selfie stick. "Today we're doing a full send wellness check-in/foam cannon surprise for the team. Because corporate doesn't have to mean boring, right?" The camera swung wide. Loud pop music blared from speakers. Someone off-screen screamed, either in joy or in fear. I couldn't tell. Interns danced around a giant inflatable flamingo in what used to be the strategy pod. The whiteboard where we used to map client goals had been replaced by a neon sign that said, "Get loud or log off." I closed the tab, but not fast enough. Because the part that hit hardest wasn't the chaos. It was how easily they had rewritten the story. Trent wasn't a visitor. He was the voice now. The comments were full of fire emojis and clapping hands, mostly from people too young to rent a car without a fee. The culture wasn't evolving. It was erasing. I leaned back and stared at the ceiling. We built that company on substance. We taught clients to scale sustainably, not virally. We walked them through crises without press releases. I used to tell junior consultants, our job isn't to be seen, it's to see. Now they had a foam cannon. Later that afternoon, my phone rang. It was Reggie from the finance team. Quiet guy, smart as hell, always asked the right questions in meetings. We hadn't talked since the day I left. "Hey," he said, "just wanted to check in. How you holding up?" I told him I was fine. That was only half a lie. He sighed. "Well, you were right to leave when you did. The place is spinning." "They start replacing the veterans yet?" He was quiet for a second too long. "Yeah. Couple this week. Dana from legal, Louis from client success. They're calling it a cultural refresh. Trent brought in a content strategist with 1 million TikTok followers to redefine deliverables. I don't even know what that means." Neither did I, but I could guess. I thanked him for the call and told him to keep his head down. He said something about polishing his resume. We hung up. Afterward, I sat at the window for a while, watching the street. People walking dogs, neighbors watering plants. Life still going, whether I had a corner office or not. I could have warned them, posted something, written a dignified takedown on Medium maybe, told the truth, that Paragon was bleeding integrity under the guise of evolution, that the people now steering the ship couldn't read a compass if you tattooed it on their hands. But I didn't, because revenge, when you're still bleeding, feels righteous. But later, when the fog clears, it just feels like noise. And I was done with noise. Instead, I opened a fresh notebook, one I hadn't touched since grad school. I flipped past the title page and wrote 2 words in the center: build again. Not rebuild, not redo. Build again. I started listing names, people I trusted, respected, former clients who might take my call. Skills I still had, gaps I saw in the market, not ideas for a business, just outlines of what I believed still mattered. Quiet leadership, long-term thinking, service over spotlight, no foam cannons. I worked until the sun disappeared behind the fence. Karen tapped on the door, told me dinner was ready. I nodded, told her I'd be right there. As she walked away, I looked back at the notebook, at the scrawled lists and half-sketched models. They thought I was too set in my ways. Maybe I was, but some ways are worth being set in. And I wasn't done yet. The first time I unlocked the door to the co-working space, it still smelled like fresh paint and new ambition. No receptionist, no ping-pong tables, just a clean desk, a second-hand chair, and silence I didn't have to earn. I didn't name the company after myself. Didn't launch with a press release or a brand anthem. I registered it quietly. Just a consultancy. No flash. No mission statement written by committee. Just one promise I wrote on the first invoice. Clarity over chaos. 6 weeks had passed since I walked out of Paragon. I hadn't posted about it. No dramatic farewell. No manifesto. I left quietly and started again the same way. I didn't need an audience. I needed results. I made 3 calls that Monday. The first was to Denise, former COO of a logistics group we helped expand into Europe 5 years ago. She picked up on the second ring. "David," she said, her voice cutting through the static like it had been waiting. "Please tell me you're doing something new." I told her I was. Good. Because we left Paragon. Didn't like the new vibe. They sent us a mood board instead of a roadmap. She signed a retainer that afternoon. The second was to Khalid, an old-school manufacturing exec who hated jargon more than I did. I told him I was going solo. He didn't even ask for a proposal. "You still use spreadsheets?" "I do." "You're hired." The third call was to Maya, a sharp strategist who'd once been my intern. She was leading operations for a boutique food startup now. She'd heard I left. "Honestly," she said, "we were waiting. Trent pitched us last week. He brought a fog machine. 3 calls, 3 clients, all of them ready before I even finished the pitch. It wasn't about loyalty. It was about hunger. These companies didn't need influencers. They needed grown-ups. And I was finally free to do the work without layers of theater sitting between problem and solution. 2 weeks later, I was invited to speak at an executive retreat. Mid-sized firms, stressed budgets, CEOs wearing too many hats. I almost said no. But something about it felt right. Not for visibility, but for connection. The room was modest, maybe 50 people, all seated at round tables in a windowless ballroom with weak coffee and stronger opinions. No stage lights, no countdown timers, no branded merchandise. I stepped up to the front. No slides. Just me, a whiteboard, and the truth. I talked about value, not valuation, about legacy, not leverage, about how chasing attention burns through teams faster than it burns through ad spend. I told them what no one was telling them. That leadership isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about making space for the quiet ones who actually know what they're doing. I didn't try to crush it. I didn't pace or gesture or do that thing where speakers point at invisible charts. I just told the truth, and when I finished, the room stood. Not politely, not out of obligation. They stood because it meant something to hear someone speak plainly again. Afterward, a woman approached me. She ran a family-owned business in Texas, said she hadn't heard anyone talk like that since her grandfather stepped down. "I thought we were the only ones left," she said. I smiled. "You're not." I drove home that night with the windows down. No music, just wind and thoughts. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt grounded. Like I had finally returned to the part of myself that got buried beneath titles and noise. When I got home, I poured a whiskey. Just one. Sat down in the office, still dressed from the event, tie a little loose. Out of habit more than curiosity, I opened my laptop. Paragon was live again. Trent was hosting a Q&A, some kind of leadership fireside jam. He was wearing a hoodie with the sleeves cut off, sitting on a beanbag chair, tossing jargon like confetti. Synergy isn't just a buzzword, he said. It's a feeling. The view count barely cracked 200. I read the comments. A few were supportive, but most weren't. What is this even about? Please bring back real leadership. Unsubscribed. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just closed the tab. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood something. They hadn't replaced me. They replaced their version of me, the version they flattened to fit a trend. But the real me, the one who built relationships, delivered results, and didn't need applause to know he was doing it right, was still here, still building, still standing. The ballroom was too cold. Industrial air pumped through the vents like it was trying to keep ambition frozen solid. I sipped weak coffee from a branded paper cup and watched as a drone zipped overhead, filming the crowd for a live stream reel no one would watch twice. I hadn't planned to attend the product reveal. I was invited as a guest speaker at a breakout session earlier in the day. Nothing flashy, just a panel on scaling with substance. But when I saw the event schedule and noticed Paragon's name in bold, I stayed. They called it a Vision Unveiled experience. Of course they did. The stage was a light show. LED panels, fog bursts, dramatic synth music like we were launching a spaceship instead of a pricing tool. Trent emerged from behind a curtain of smoke wearing sneakers that probably cost more than my first car and a bomber jacket embroidered with motivational words: impact, scale, vibrate. He greeted the crowd like an influencer walking into a surprise birthday party. "Paragon Nation, how we feelin'?" he shouted. A few people clapped. Most just looked confused. The presentation began with a sizzle reel, slow motion footage of young professionals doing things, running upstairs, laughing at laptops, high-fiving near charts that didn't show any numbers. Then came the announcement, a new platform called Sync Loop. Trent described it as a revolutionary ecosystem for frictionless collaboration and radical engagement. Translation: project management software with emojis. Then came the live demo. It crashed 5 seconds in. He laughed it off, tried to riff. One of his influencer team members jumped in, started reading buzzwords off a tablet like a poorly rehearsed hostage video. Another began a spoken word segment about digital culture. I wish I were joking. The ballroom air shifted. The applause stopped. Someone coughed loudly in the silence. And then, mercifully, they opened it up for questions. The first came from a woman near the front, CEO of a logistics firm I recognized. "What's your actual churn rate over the last quarter?" Trent blinked. "We believe churn is a legacy metric. We're focused on vibe retention." There was an audible pause, the kind that pulls every eye in the room toward the speaker to confirm they really said what you think they said. The next question came from a man in a navy blazer. "You replaced a senior strategy team with a content squad. How's that impacted ROI?" "Great question," Trent said, stalling. "We're redefining ROI to include non-tangible emotional resonance." By the third question, it wasn't a Q&A. It was an autopsy. He had no answers, just euphemisms wrapped in TikTok cadence. And the room, filled with people who actually run businesses, knew it. Whispers started. A few attendees got up and left. Someone near me muttered, "This is what they fired Linwood for?" I didn't react, just sat still, let the moment breathe. After the session, as the lights came up and the Paragon team scattered like actors after a failed opening night, I slipped quietly toward the back. I didn't need to gloat. The silence had done it for me. That's when I heard my name. David. I turned. It was Meredith, former board member, sharp as glass, twice as cold. She used to wear brooches shaped like swords. Today, it was a phoenix. I half smiled. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said. "I was on a panel earlier." She nodded. "Listen, would you be open to coffee sometime? Just to talk, off the record." I didn't answer right away. She waited. "I'll think about it," I said. Her lips tightened into a half frown, half smile. Still deliberate, I see. I didn't correct her. I just nodded and moved on. Later that evening, I ran into Louie and Dana, two of the many veterans Trent had replaced. They were at the hotel bar, drinks in hand, already halfway through their second round. I joined them. Louie looked 10 years younger, wearing jeans instead of slacks for the first time in decades. "Working at a startup now," he said. "Founders actually ask what I think." Dana leaned in. "You should have seen Trent's face when the demo tanked. Kid looked like someone canceled his algorithm." We laughed, not cruelly, just with the kind of relief that comes when a wound starts to scar over. Before I left, Dana raised her glass. "To what they couldn't see. To what they threw away," Louie added. I didn't toast, just nodded. Back in my room, I sat by the window and looked out over the city. The lights below didn't care who had the microphone today. Trends would fade, hype would burn out, but real work, the kind that lasts, always found its way back to the surface. Paragon hadn't just lost me. They lost their foundation. And now, everyone could see it. 3 months out, and my calendar is full again. But this time, on my terms. The office isn't much. A second-story space above a quiet bookstore, with big windows and crooked floors that creak when you think too hard. But it's mine. There's no front desk, no branded merch wall, no staged ping-pong table. Just 2 desks, a coffee maker that groans with age, and the sound of work being done without an audience. Maya, one of the young strategists I brought on, stops by my desk mid-morning with a draft proposal. She's smart, sharp in a way that isn't about being loud. She's learning fast. She doesn't pitch fluff. She asks questions, listens, and when she doesn't know something, she says so. That alone puts her miles ahead of most people twice her age. We go over the proposal together. No slides, no slogans, just clarity. Before she leaves the room, she turns back and says, "Hey, our client from Beacon and Flint sent you a message." I raise an eyebrow. "Said to tell you thanks. Called you their anchor in a storm." I nod slowly, letting the words settle. Then I go back to work. There's no need to post it. No need to quote it in a carousel on social media. It's enough to know that when things get shaky, they call me. Not for a spotlight, but for direction. That's the part they never understood. As the day winds down, I pack up slowly. I don't rush anymore. I used to. Always running to the next meeting, the next fire to put out. Now, I take my time. I let silence work for me. The sun's just starting to dip as I step outside. The bookstore owner waves from behind the glass. I nod back. It's Friday, and the street smells like warm bread and pavement. Instead of heading straight home, I take the long way. Out of curiosity, not nostalgia. The Paragon building is still there. Same glass facade, same steel edges. But something's off. The lights inside are dim, most floors dark entirely. The logo still hangs above the entrance, but the boldness it once held has dulled somehow, like it knows it doesn't mean what it used to. And then I see it. A leasing sign. It stands just behind the lobby window, angled like someone tried to hide it, but gave up halfway. Temporary, Maybe. Permanent. Probably. Either way, I don't linger. I stand for a moment on the sidewalk, hands in my pockets. I'm not angry. I'm not triumphant either. That's the thing about closure. It doesn't come with a parade. Sometimes it comes in the form of a faded logo and an empty reception desk. I look up at the building one last time. The office that used to be mine is dark now. Maybe it's empty. Maybe it's still full of ring lights and echo chambers. Doesn't matter. They said I was too set in my ways. Maybe I was. I believed in loyalty, in showing up early and staying late, in writing proposals instead of taglines, in mentoring instead of monetizing. I believed in building things the slow, careful, durable way, and I still do. I whisper the words, not to the building, not to the street, but to myself. Then I turn and keep walking. No need to look back, no ghosts to chase, just a long, quiet stretch of sidewalk and a sky that's turning gold. Some people build their legacy out loud. I built mine in the margins, in boardrooms where no one clapped, in conversations no one filmed, in decisions that didn't trend but made a difference. They replaced me with noise, but I left with something they never saw coming. I took the soul with me.